Elton John has spoken about many chapters of his life, but there is one bond he returns to with a tenderness that time has only deepened: his friendship with George Michael. For decades, the world speculated endlessly about the nature of their connection. Two icons at the height of fame, two men whose lives were scrutinized more than celebrated, and two artists whose honesty in music made the public believe there had to be more between them than friendship. Even after years of rumors suggesting a romance, Elton remained quiet, protective, and deeply respectful of the truth. That truth surfaced with unmistakable emotion when Elton honored George on what would have been his 60th birthday, performing "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," the song they once transformed into an unforgettable duet. In that moment, the world saw something far more profound than gossip could ever capture: a rare friendship forged in creativity, trust, and shared vulnerability. This is the story behind that connection: their beginnings, their collaborations, their challenges, and the truth about a bond built not on romance, but on mutual admiration and unwavering respect. When Elton John first crossed paths with George Michael in the south of France in 1984, neither of them could have imagined how deeply their lives would intertwine. At the time, they were standing on opposite ends of fame's vast landscape. Elton was already a global legend, his career marked by sky-high triumphs and deeply human struggles. George, fresh from the meteoric rise of Wham, was becoming one of the most recognizable voices of the decade. Yet in that quiet corner of Europe, far removed from stages and cameras, they met not as icons, but as musicians searching for understanding in a world that rarely offered it. Their first conversations were unhurried and unexpectedly gentle. Elton admired George's discipline, the way he could slip from a bright pop performance into a deeply introspective ballad with seamless emotional clarity. George in turn watched Elton with the awe of someone seeing true mastery up close. Elton's stage presence, his ability to make a stadium feel like a living room, struck George as something both impossible and profoundly human. They recognized something in one another long before they had the language to describe it: a shared devotion to craft and a shared vulnerability beneath the spotlight's glare. Only a year later, in 1985, Elton delivered one of the most memorable performances of Live Aid. George watched closely, inspired not just by the music but by Elton's heart. The way he gave everything, even when life was demanding more than it offered. Fame had already begun to press heavily on both men, but these early moments between them became a kind of refuge, a place where they could speak openly about the pressures the public never saw. Their growing friendship was shaped not by grand gestures but by long, reflective conversations about songwriting and the emotional toll of living constantly on display. George spoke frankly about the weight of sudden global fame, the exhaustion of being adored yet misunderstood. Elton, having survived his own storms, understood instinctively. He had lived that kind of loneliness, the kind that hides beneath applause. Their honesty created a bond that felt almost immediate, as if they had known each other long before their first handshake. Music became the natural language of their connection. They shared a deep affection for classic soul, voices that carried truth, longing, and unvarnished feeling. Elton was moved by George's ability to write lyrics that revealed his inner world with delicate precision. George admired Elton's emotional bravery, the way he could turn personal history into melodies that stayed with people for decades. After only a few meetings, it was clear they were kindred spirits, both shaped by music that demanded sincerity. There was also humor, quiet, effortless, and necessary. George had a wit that softened even Elton's hardest days, and Elton offered the kind of laughter that made George feel seen beyond his superstar persona. In those early years before collaborations and public appearances solidified their partnership, their friendship lived in these intimate exchanges, grounded in trust and a mutual recognition of each other's strengths and fears. Even their earliest ideas for working together carried a spark that surprised them both. They didn't rush into the studio, but the potential was unmistakable. The blend of Elton's expressive piano and George's soulful voice felt natural, almost predestined. Behind the music was something deeper, two men who understood the fragility of fame, the heaviness of expectation, and the relief of finding someone who lived inside the same storm. This foundation, built in 1984, strengthened in 1985, and sustained by raw honesty, would ultimately shape one of the most meaningful friendships in modern music. It was a beginning marked not by spectacle, but by understanding, admiration, and the unmistakable sense that their lives had quietly changed the moment they met. As the 1980s unfolded, Elton John and George Michael found themselves drawn together not only by friendship, but by a creative connection that seemed to strengthen each time they stepped into the same room. Their bond, still young yet quietly deep, began shifting into something the world could finally hear. What had started with late-night conversations in the south of France was becoming a musical partnership that neither man had anticipated, but both felt profoundly. George was entering a new phase of his career, stepping away from the bright pop image of Wham and moving toward a more mature, soulful sound. Elton watched this transformation with pride. He admired the seriousness with which George approached songwriting, the courage it took to evolve publicly, and the grace with which he handled the pressure of being one of the world's most recognizable young stars. George, meanwhile, saw Elton as a guide, someone who had already navigated the turbulence of fame, survived its storms, and emerged with artistry intact. Their first significant collaboration took shape with a sense of ease, as though their voices had been waiting for one another. The chemistry between Elton's warm, expressive phrasing and George's powerful yet tender vocals felt immediate. Behind the scenes, their recording sessions were marked by gentle encouragement, shared laughter, and a mutual respect that made the work feel less like a project and more like a continuation of their friendship. Elton often spoke of George's ability to elevate a song simply by understanding its emotional truth. George, in turn, admired Elton's instinctive musicianship, that remarkable ability to transform a melody into a confession. By the time they performed "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" together, the world witnessed what those close to them had already seen. The duet was not just a performance, it was a conversation in music, a blending of two artists who understood each other on a level that went far beyond notes and lyrics. The audience felt it, the sincerity, the shared vulnerability, the sense that these two men were expressing something far more intimate than fame usually allowed. The song, already one of Elton's most emotional pieces, took on new life through George's voice, becoming a testament to the connection they had nurtured since 1984. Yet their relationship extended far beyond the studio. They spent time together quietly, away from cameras, supporting each other through personal and professional challenges. Elton offered the kind of steady presence George often needed, and George brought a sense of calm and clarity into Elton's world. Their bond was not dramatic or volatile. It was rooted in genuine affection and deep understanding. Fame can isolate even the most celebrated artists, but in each other they found someone who understood not just the privilege of success, but the loneliness that lingered behind it. As the 1990s approached, the pair continued to explore new opportunities to work together. Each collaboration added another layer to their connection, shaping a legacy built on authenticity rather than publicity. Their performances were met with admiration not because they were famous, but because the emotion between them was unmistakably real. Through it all, what remained constant was their unwavering respect for one another, as musicians, as men, and as friends navigating extraordinary lives. Section 2 marks the height of their creative unity, a time when their bond was visible to the world, carried through every harmony and shared moment on stage. As time moved forward, the friendship between Elton John and George Michael entered a far more complicated chapter. The early spark that had defined their work together in the 1980s evolved into something deeper but also more fragile. Their bond had never been built on constant closeness. Rather, it lived in moments of honesty, shared history, and a profound understanding that both men carried more on their shoulders than the world ever truly saw. Yet despite this foundation, life had a way of pulling them in different directions. George Michael, stepping with intention into a more private and introspective adulthood, began to guard his inner world with increasing care. The pressure of fame, already immense in the 1980s, intensified as he fought for artistic independence and personal privacy. Elton had lived through similar storms and recognized the signs: the exhaustion, the need to disappear, the instinct to retreat when the world became too loud. He spoke publicly at times with concern, hoping George would embrace support rather than face his challenges alone. Those comments, though rooted in love, occasionally created tension. George valued solitude, and his boundaries were firm. The distance between them widened, not out of anger, but out of two different approaches to navigating pain. Behind closed doors, however, the affection never faded. Their friends often described the connection between them as one that survived misunderstandings because it was built on something sturdier than constant agreement. Elton admired George's introspection, the fierce independence that shaped his music in the 1990s and beyond. George, even in moments of distance, held deep respect for Elton's resilience and his willingness to confront his struggles openly. Their lives were unfolding in parallel, both men confronting loss, grief, and the weight of expectations few could imagine. In these years, their communication became quieter, softer. There were long stretches without conversation, followed by brief, heartfelt exchanges that reminded them why their bond had mattered from the beginning. Fame had introduced them, but it was their shared vulnerability that kept them connected, even when they were not standing side by side. As George continued to evolve artistically, Elton observed from afar with the mixture of pride and worry that only a true friend understands. He celebrated George's achievements, marveled at the depth of his later work, and carried the hope that time would eventually guide them back into the same room again. They were never estranged in the dramatic sense. Instead, theirs was a distance shaped by life, by healing done separately, and by the quiet acknowledgement that love between friends sometimes survives best when given space. When George passed away in 2016, Elton spoke with a grief that revealed the depth of their unbreakable bond. He mourned a friend he had known from the earliest days of fame, a man whose voice had changed the landscape of modern music, and whose kindness had touched him in ways few understood. And years later, on what would have been George's 60th birthday, Elton honored him with a performance of "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me." It was quiet, heartfelt, and deeply personal, a tribute shaped entirely by memory and love. On what would have been George Michael's 60th birthday, Elton John took the stage to honor a friend the world had loved and misunderstood. Performing "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," the song that had become a hallmark of their collaboration, Elton delivered each note quietly, with a tenderness that spoke volumes. It was a moment shaped entirely by memory and love, an acknowledgement of the bond that had endured decades of fame, pressure, and public scrutiny. For those who knew the story, it was a reaffirmation of the truth. The friendship between Elton and George had always been deep, intimate, and unwavering, even when headlines suggested otherwise. For years, their connection had been the subject of speculation. Rumors of a romantic involvement persisted through the 1980s, 90s, and into the early 2000s. Magazine spreads, tabloids, and gossip columns seized upon their closeness, misreading laughter backstage, shared tours, and heartfelt collaborations as something more than friendship. Elton often remained silent, choosing discretion over correction, understanding that the bond he shared with George was private and sacred. George, fiercely protective of his personal life, responded with boundaries, and at times public statements that reflected frustration with being mischaracterized. The tension between them was never born of personal animosity. It was a quiet, emotional friction created by fame and misunderstanding. In the early 2000s, George expressed disappointment in some of Elton's public reflections, which he felt might be misinterpreted by a world eager for scandal. Elton, for his part, approached the situation with care and patience. never questioning George's motives or diminishing the friendship they had cultivated over decades. The result was a period of distance, where conversations were fewer and appearances together became rare. It was a time shaped not by betrayal, but by the pressures of fame and the desire to preserve dignity. During this period, their musical partnership paused, though the respect remained intact. Public appearances and joint performances became almost non-existent, giving space for both men to navigate their careers and personal lives independently. Yet the foundation of trust and admiration never wavered. Friends close to both artists noted that despite the reduced contact, the bond persisted quietly in shared memories, mutual respect, and the knowledge that their connection had survived the intensity of public scrutiny once before. Even in absence, the world recognized the significance of what they had created together. "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me," first performed live in 1985, and later released as a live single in 1991, continued to define both their legacies. The song became more than a chart-topping hit. It was a symbol of mutual understanding, of friendship forged in the pressures of fame, and of the emotional honesty both men brought to their art. It reminded audiences that while the world often misconstrued closeness as romance, some relationships existed on a different, equally powerful plane. By the end of this period, the misinterpretations and public scrutiny had left their mark, but they did not define the friendship. The distance, the disagreements, and the rumors all underscored a simple truth. The connection between Elton John and George Michael was rooted in admiration, trust, and a rare intimacy that fame could neither create nor destroy. And in honoring George decades later, Elton reminded the world with every quiet, heartfelt note that the deepest bonds are often those that are never fully visible to the public eye. In the years that followed their period of distance, Elton John and George Michael's friendship settled into a quieter, more reflective rhythm. The misunderstandings of the past, fueled by speculation and media misinterpretation, gave way to a renewed understanding of what had always defined their connection: trust, admiration, and a profound respect for one another's artistry. Though they were no longer collaborating as frequently, the foundation of their bond remained unshaken, reinforced by decades of shared experiences, creative dialogue, and a deep understanding of the pressures of fame. Elton often spoke of George in interviews after his passing in 2016, emphasizing the man he knew, a friend whose talent, work ethic, and integrity had always inspired him. He highlighted George's extraordinary dedication to music, the discipline that shaped albums such as Faith, Listen Without Prejudice Volume 1, and Older, and the emotional honesty he brought to every performance. Elton described George not only as a brilliant musician, but as someone whose friendship offered clarity, warmth, and perspective during some of the most challenging periods of his own life. In those reflections, Elton reaffirmed a truth that had long been obscured by gossip. Their relationship had always been rooted in mutual respect, not romance. For George, Elton had been a guiding presence in both his personal and professional life. From their earliest meetings in 1984 through the height of George's solo career, Elton provided encouragement, advice, and steady companionship. Their bond had weathered periods of distance, yet the care and admiration they held for one another never diminished. Friends and colleagues noted that this quiet, enduring connection shaped George's approach to performance, giving him both inspiration and a sense of grounding amid global scrutiny. One of the most poignant public reminders of their connection came on what would have been George's 60th birthday. Elton performed "Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me" in his honor, a song that had defined their artistic partnership and captured the emotional depth of their friendship. The performance was quiet, heartfelt, and deeply personal, a testament to the bond they had forged through music, shared experiences, and unwavering loyalty. In that single moment, the public glimpsed what their private friendship had always been: intimate, respectful, and enduring, untouched by rumor and speculation. Beyond music, their legacy extended to charitable work. Both men had dedicated significant portions of their lives to causes close to their hearts, particularly in raising awareness and support for HIV/AIDS initiatives. Their collaborations, performances, and personal advocacy reflected a shared desire to make a positive impact on the world, reinforcing the sense that their friendship had always been grounded in integrity and compassion, not the fleeting allure of fame. Ultimately, their story is one of resilience and authenticity. They navigated decades of global attention, creative highs, personal struggles, and public misconceptions, emerging with a bond that endured beyond the misunderstandings of others. Elton's reflections and his tribute performances ensured that George's memory was honored not through sensationalism, but through music, storytelling, and the truth of a profound friendship. In the end, their relationship exemplified a rare kind of closeness, one defined by respect, trust, and emotional honesty, leaving a lasting imprint on music and on all who understood the depth of their connection. The friendship between Elton John and George Michael was never defined by rumor or speculation, but by a rare and enduring connection that spanned decades. From their first meeting in the south of France in 1984, to the quiet, heartfelt tribute Elton performed on what would have been George's 60th birthday, their bond was built on trust, admiration, and a shared understanding of the pressures of fame. They collaborated on iconic music, including Don't Let the Sun Go Down on Me, creating performances that captured not only the power of their voices, but the intimacy of a friendship few could see. Even in periods of distance, their respect for one another never wavered. Elton spoke openly of George's talent, dedication, and integrity, honoring a friend who had shaped his life as much as he had shaped George's. Their story is a testament to the enduring strength of platonic love, the quiet power of mutual respect, and the way two extraordinary artists can inspire one another both on and off the stage. For more emotional stories, check out this video.